beautiful beings. I'm coming to you from the car today. I am on a little bit of a road trip to go have a biomagnetic pair therapy session to work on some underlying physical infection stuff that I'm trying to fully resolve. And I've got my rose-colored glasses on because it's a metaphor. So I'm recording this a little early, but you're going to be seeing this, or I'll be sending it out on Wednesday, which is a day ahead of the really big and important solar eclipse and partial solar eclipse, depending on where you are in the world, that we're having. And I want to talk about those energies. And anytime we have an eclipse, it's about taking off the rose-colored glasses and seeing the truth and being courageous in seeing that truth. Especially when we have the first of the two eclipses, because eclipse always comes in pairs, right? They come in pairs. And so this first one will be about illuminating the dark, and the second one will be about anchoring the light, right? And so this is a really intense one. It's an Aries eclipse. This will be, it's big. It's forceful. It's in your face a little bit, and you can't ignore it. That's how I would describe it. And as I've been reading the energies and supporting clients and doing my own work ahead of this eclipse and really sitting with what it means, what I'm finding is that this eclipse is about courage. It's about being a leader in our own lives and being a way shower and embracing a lot of the things that I've been talking about with you for the last 3.5 months in my energy updates and my videos, where we've been doing deep work to embrace the way shower. And what I'm witnessing, and this is a little bit of a content warning or trigger warning around abuse, so if that's a thing for you, you may want to turn this video off. I don't just want to give you a heads up that we are clearing out so many abuse patterns right now. And we went through this in a different way at some point last year. I don't remember exactly when it was. I feel like it might have been in the fall. It might have been around another eclipse as well. We're clearing out the shadow. And I personally, the reason why I'm in the car today, I'm driving an hour and a half to go get something to support clearing a really big energy that's tapped into the infections in my body that came to the surface after I had COVID, and also came to the surface as I've been on the last 5 years of healing sexual trauma that happened to me when I was very little, when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and maybe up until I was around 6. And I don't really talk about this very often. I don't share this with a lot of people, but about 5 years ago, I had some very distinct awarenesses and memories come in about abuse, about sexual trauma. And I've been unpacking that for 5 years. And it's a really difficult process because my mental body, my brain has quarantined off a lot of those memories. And so I'm pretty sure I know who the perpetrator is and I know what happened, but I don't have it in full technicolor detail, which I'm sure is probably a blessing. And I have seen an uptick in the clearing of abuse energies of all kinds in the last couple of weeks. Some of the sessions I've been having have been shocking even me about what's been coming to light and how old it is and how many generations it goes back. And this is both for male and female clients, any gender. And it's sexual abuse, it's emotional abuse, it's physical abuse, it's empathic, narcissistic abuse, it's gaslighting and all of those things. And it's this tendency that some of us have as empaths and sensitives to take that energy on and transmute it on behalf of the collective. And you might remember that in January, when I started talking about our theme of the year of being the empowered way shower, that I mentioned that we were coming to the end of a cycle where those of us who are sensitives would be doing the processing work on behalf of the collective because they really didn't have the capacity in the past to do it. And we are closing out that fucking chapter. Like, I'm so done with that chapter. I hope some of you are really done with that chapter. And it's interesting because what I've been finding in people's fields and in my field, my energy body as well, is that the tendency of the empath, especially if there's an abusive energy that's taken place, is because we're already transmuters, we're already sensitive, and we're already pulling that energy into our body. We have two different ways that we react to that. We might take that energy in during the abuse, and we might take on the shame of our abuser and pull it really deeply into our body, and then that creates this pattern or this opening in our field where we can continue to do that for everybody around us, and it's very unconscious. And so last month we worked on responsibility energy, and I see that we're now coming to a choice point as empaths and sensitives to say, I am not here as a vessel of this toxic energy for other people to place in my field, knowingly or unknowingly anymore. And we also, as sensitives, have to take on the understanding and the awareness and self-responsibility that we have to actually make that choice, and we have to make that choice consciously, even though these things have been happening unconsciously, probably because of abuse either in this lifetime or some other lifetime, and not knowing what to do differently. And so it is, and I had a healing circle last week about owning your choices. It is a choice that we have to make. We have to say, yeah, I feel the pain of the world, I feel the pain of my partner, I feel all of this stuff that's happening around me, but I realize that it's not my responsibility to take that into my being and transmute it for everyone, that I can witness, I can observe, I can hold space for, I can have compassion for, but I can be a way shower of what it looks like to claim what feels good for me and what my joy is, and I can make choices, and I can use my voice, and I can ask for support, and I can do all of these things courageously, and I can be an example rather than being in this place of sacrifice. And I feel like this is really divine timing, because what I'm witnessing is that those who maybe haven't dropped into doing this deeper work because maybe they're not as tuned into their empathic abilities, which I believe that we all have to some degree, and have been numbing out, I think it's time that they start stepping into doing more of this work. And so you might find that as you're coming into this eclipse with all this fiery Aries energy, that you're a little pissed off, that you're dealing with some anger, that you're dealing with some frustration. And you might find that a good portion of that anger is actually inwardly directed and has maybe turned into shame and regret and remorse, or some bitterness perhaps, and maybe even it's gotten so buried in your body, this anger energy, that it's turned into some depression. And so these are the underbelly things that we're clearing. And so if we want others to step up and do their internal work, we have to get a bit off of our high horse a little bit as people that have been on this spiritual journey for a while, and say, yeah, I've been doing this work for a while, but I'm still doing my work, and I still don't have all the answers, and I'm still figuring it out. And we have to be honest about that with the people in our lives who may just now be starting to wake up and starting to explore. And it's that humility and that vulnerability, while also not taking it on for them, that is going to empower us and give us the courage that we need to continue, because there's a lot of disillusionment energy, and dare I say some despair energy going on of, my God, this is a slog, right? Like, we're clearing thousands of years, maybe even probably way more than that, hundreds of thousands of years of duality here. And we're doing it in a relatively short period of time. We really started in earnest in 2012. We're about halfway through a cycle to take us to 2032. And that's really great that we're doing it this quickly, but man, it's a lot of work. And so we might be feeling a little fatigued, a little frustrated. And so when we get to that place, if we don't listen to those voices inside of us and do our own inner work to take care of ourselves, then we start projecting that frustration out onto other people, and then they shut down even more, especially if there's somebody who is new to their emotions and new to being sensitive and tapping into that. And so it's a very, very fine balance of not taking on the responsibility and doing the work for them, but also not projecting our crap onto them, which is what we would want from them as well. And so you may have some people in your life that are really defensive right now and really having a hard time, and they're not able to put it into words. And so the more you can be vulnerable and share your truth of what's happening with you, it gives others around you permission. And so this idea of being the leader, being the way shower, being courageous, I think is really the essence of what this particular eclipse is about. Like, it's clearing the shadow parts of us and the emotions that are stuck in our field, the things that are holding us back from being in that courage and being in that leadership role. And so shame, regret, holding on to the past, holding on to bitterness, competition energy, anger, fear is a big one, right? Those are things that might be coming up to be released right now. And the wonderful thing about eclipse energy, I tend to have really big stuff happen for me when eclipses. Last year I had this huge event that I co-hosted, and it was very successful, but it happened on an eclipse. This year my birthday is on the eclipse, and so I find that these energies are hugely transformative. And if I can just keep my being can keep supporting my being and keep taking care of my being, then wow, anything is really possible in these windows. Like, I have so many downloads and learnings and awarenesses that come in, and there's so much support from the universal energies to really bring things to a close. And so that's why I'm excited about this appointment that I'm going to. It's like a new opportunity for me to bring another round of healing into my physical body and to clear this infection. And side note, I've been working with this energy for 5 years, and so you can connect the dots of where some of this infection energy might be coming from and what how my trauma, my abuse trauma, is attached to that. And as I've been working with it and getting to new levels of healing and new levels of healing, it's been this kind of like stair-step process, and there have been many points along the way where I felt like giving up and felt like, oh my God, I'm just gonna die. This is too much. I can't keep doing this. And always there's some kind of thing that happens, or a client that shows up, or somebody, and in helping them and in witnessing their process, I find new life for my own process. And I'm so grateful that the universe and my guides and those around me are supporting me in that way. And yeah, I've had to be really patient. But what I've been learning about infections when I've been tuning into talking to my guides about it, and why is this still here and why is it still present, they always say to me, Katie, you have to release what the infection is hooked into. And I think it's the same thing with autoimmune conditions. I think it's the same thing with anything that we have that's chronic in our body. It is hooked into so many emotions, and I think that's pretty well received in most circles now. I think that's pretty well understood, maybe not fully in the medical system. But anger and frustration and bitterness and resentment is often what I see at the root of infection energy and autoimmune conditions and those chronic things. And boy, do we not know, we really don't know how to handle that on this planet. Like, we have some really screwed up tendencies around anger, and so it's no wonder that we have things like infections and chronic diseases, and then things that turn into like cancer, right? It makes perfect sense. And what's interesting though is that when you're healing it, after the body has gotten to a place of infection, like, you have to treat it from all sides. And I think that's what this eclipse is about too. It's like the eclipse energy tends to be very thorough. It's like, we're going to approach the things that are happening in your shadow from all sides. We're going to approach it from perhaps what's happening in your external environment, in your life, in your relationships. We're going to approach it from what's happening in your body. Some body things are going to get kicked up. We're going to approach it from your emotional landscape. We're going to tap into your ego and the things that are buried there. Like, it's very thorough energy. And if you can say, hey, I'm not in resistance to what needs to leave, and you can be with the process of letting go, and you can be in that courage, they're super powerful, right? And they're 2-week portals, and so that's not a relatively long time, although sometimes when you're in a big process it feels really long. But there is a beginning and an end to it. And then, of course, we have year-to-year eclipse cycles, and So we're also closing out what got kicked up last April, and boy, I can see the thread in my life of this responsibility stuff and this abuse stuff that really kicked off in April last year around the last eclipse, and what I had to say no to, and how that's progressed me into this healing process. And so I encourage you, if you get some time in the next few days, to start thinking about, okay, what's happened for me so far this year? What are the things that I want to close out? And what maybe happened around this time last year that got kicked up that I am also ready to close out? And what would that mean for me? If these cycles were to come to a close, what would that mean for my life? And you may find that as you tune into that there's some fear that comes up, because you're like, wow, that might mean some really big things are going to change, which is okay. That's totally okay. You may also find, though, that you're excited, right? And there's some optimism of, look at these really hard slogs that I've been moving through, and maybe that's coming to an end, at least we're coming into a new frequency with it, a new level of ease with it. And so that's my hope for this and for humanity as we move through this very powerful couple of weeks here. And of course, the day after the eclipse, we have Mercury retrograde, which I know people make a big deal about, but I really think that's another very supportive energy of completing a cycle, which is super awesome. Like, we're completing a cycle and going back and finishing up things that maybe hadn't completed. That's what Mercury retrograde is about. It has all of its other things with it, but that's what I tend to tune into. So this is a really powerful time. So use it wisely, and pay attention to what's coming up, and try not to judge yourself, and try not to be hard on yourself. If you need more rest, you need more support, you need more joy, you need more play, whatever you need to do to move through this window, okay? And the last thing I'll say on the topic of the abuse piece is the generational piece of this is really substantial right now. And so if you find that part of what I just talked about speaks to you, and you're like, hey, those are some of the things I want to close out, this is a great time to have conversations about some things. It's a great time to tune into that, and to have conversations internally and have conversations externally as well with maybe family members about different patterns, and bring that to a close. So I hope this speaks to you. I hope y'all are doing okay, and I love you all. And comment, let me know what's coming up for you with this eclipse, and I'll see you next week.